Fab. Good morning all. Thank you for attending the Apprenticeship Levy Transfer event. This is with West Midlands Combined Authority, GBS LEP and all of our local authorities. So those that don't know me, my name's Louise Ward. I'm going to be your host for today. Can I ask that everyone turns their microphones off, please? And the session is being recorded. You will receive an email, after the event from our campaign manager with the presentation, recording from today and a handy crib sheet. Could I ask that you check your spam, as sometimes it goes into the folder for some reason. This session is scheduled for an hour and a half. However, we anticipate that this will be around an hour, and then we're going to allow some time for question and answers. So any questions, please do pop them in the chat function. And we will begin. So today the agenda that we're looking at covering is, and I hope you guys get a lot out of this today, so just moving across. So we're going to cover the criteria for the West Midlands Apprenticeship Levy transfer. We'll also cover the regional local authority transfer. We want to make sure that we've got a cohesive offer for you guys as training providers and colleges and DWP colleagues. We're going to talk through a little bit around the process to make it a little bit easier for you. Training provider experience, so we've got Martin who's jumping on, and then we've also got an apprentice experience of the levy transfer scheme. So hopefully we'll then be covering the ESFA National Levy Transfer Scheme. At the end, there'll be questions and answers, so feel free to pop them in the chat box. Won't be able to do it as we go along, but we can do that all at the end. So moving on. Apologies, people are going to be popping in and out, no doubt. So the Apprenticeship Levy funded region, what does that cover? We cover a variety of areas really across the West Midlands. So it is Black Country LEP, Coventry and Warwickshire, Greater Birmingham and Solihull and the Marches. So that covers Telford, Wrekin, Shropshire and also Herefordshire. Worcester falls short out of that, and I believe they have their own levy transfer scheme. However, we've brought together all the local authorities to kind of inform you guys of what's available. Next slide. So why are we doing this and what are we doing to support across the region? So for those that aren't aware, we've been running this now since 2019, April. We've had an initiative, and it originally started off with the Mayor's apprenticeship commitment. He wanted to look at how do we support £40 million investment of reinvested funds back in from large employers back into the West Midlands. So we set it up from starters. We worked alongside with the ESFA to look at how do we fill that gap, particularly with £300 million going back in Q4 for non-levy devolved funding, which I think kind of hit quite a lot of colleges and training providers for the SME market. Why we're doing this also is we want to increase SME apprenticeship demand. Figures, looking on the data, so the last data for R13, it was down 73% year on year for 16 to 24-year-olds. So that's quite astronomical. And there's a variety of reasons. One, non-levy funding. Two, the reservation caps on the SME portal for the apprenticeship service. And generally, I think individuals are continuing to either go on to Kickstart or actually they're staying in long-term in further education, so they're staying in colleges or universities. But what we want to do as an entity, and obviously we've brought together you guys as some of our partners across the West Midlands, is to support young people to access high quality apprenticeships. And we can't do that on our own. So we want to make sure that you guys are informed and involved as part of that. Additional to that, what we are looking at, so whilst this is a great opportunity, the incentive grants are extending, as everybody's aware, until the end of January. You could take them on until March. This is a nice little hook to support smaller employers to access the 5% co-investment, and hopefully a training provider will give you a bit of a view of the scheme that we've currently got at the moment. Have the next slide, Lisa, please. The areas that we want to look at, so we've talked about increasing the growth, particularly in digital skills, particularly in green. I'll talk through the criteria on the next slide, but ultimately it's about supporting the local industrial strategy to inclusive economic growth. So we want social mobility, we want to support the younger people, particularly COVID, and we've hit, they've been quite hard hit really in terms of that age bracket. So we want to try and support those. So the criteria on the next slide talks about where we want to look at supporting them. Based on some of the data that we've been getting for 16 to 24-year-olds, we've said that we will support 16 to 18, all standards, all levels. Appreciate that does go through as a fully funded on your digital accounts with smaller employers. However, if they're looking at large cohorts, you can only reserve up to 10. So I would say that this might be an opportunity to access this rather than dip into their 10 reservations. And then 19 to 24, all standards, all levels across the West Midlands Combined Authority that I mentioned earlier. And those will be for new job starts and progressions. So if you're looking at 25 plus, I'll talk about the opportunities available for that on the next, further on. Next slide. So these are just some of the partners. So we're currently working with 46, we just had another one come over the line, 46 Levy donors, and they are national and regional, so they have a presence. That just gives you a bit of an idea of the partners that we're working with alongside. So to give you a flavour, and this is a thank you to you guys who have partnered with us already, you're looking at 712 SMEs that have gone through this scheme, and that's since April 2019. I'm having a look at my figures because it's gone up now. 2,262 apprentices have really benefited from this. We've got an 18.5 million planned spend. So that's over the lifetime. And then we've also got a £30 million pledged with multi-years. So there's money there, there's funding there, it's available to smaller employers. So I'd really say reach out as part of your SME engagement. And I just really want to thank the training providers and colleges that have already got behind us. So those that are new to this, certainly we can help you, but it is a great initiative that we've been driving, and I will say we are the best region nationally. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there and thank everybody. Next slide. So now we're going to move on to the regional local authority levy transfer. So we've been working with all our local authority partners, so a variety of Birmingham councils, Coventry City Council, Wolverhampton, you can see those there. Some of them have spent up for this financial year. However, we are going to be looking at new starts from April 2022. I have got a really handy crib sheet that we'll send out to everybody that kind of looks at the criteria across the region. And we'll just move across and have a little look at the different regions and local authorities and the criteria that they're looking at. Next slide. So Birmingham City Council, anybody who's Birmingham based, whether you're a resident, an SME, they'll support all sectors or levels. However, they do want to be looking at priority groups. On the next slide, you've got Coventry City Council. Again, any Coventry residents or SME companies, and they've got a handy link that you can go direct to them or come through ourselves and we hand them over. Again, same criteria that they're looking at. Next slide. Shropshire Council, so they're particularly looking at small SME businesses, public sector health care organisation, voluntary community or social enterprise, and they're also looking at organisations or schools that aren't aligned to them as a council. And then additional opportunities of 16 to 18-year-olds but unable to access funding via training providers. Go through. Staffordshire County Council, they're spent, which is great. So they've had a really good intake this year. However, they then said that they will support from April 2022. That said, while Staffordshire County Council can't do this year, we have got other levy donors. So the crib sheet will break this down further for you. Next council, Worcestershire County Council. Again, you'll have some flyers that's sent out on here. They're a little bit more specific in the fact that they want to support SMEs and residents, but in particular sectors. So health and social care, rail, childcare, travel and tourism, advanced manufacturing, hospitality, and any business on a growth trajectory, SEND learners and disabilities for those with disabilities. What they have said is they are going to ring fence some money next year for inclusive apprenticeships to support those particular learners. So again, you can connect directly with those. Next council, Wolverhampton. SME residents, they're particularly looking at the care sector, voluntary sector and priority groups. Again, if you come through, we can always send them over to Wolverhampton Council or elsewhere with our levy donors. So to move on to the application process. Now, for those that haven't gone through the process, those that have, obviously you don't need this section, but for those that have gone through, this is a really good, useful tool. We've tried to make it as easy, as simple as possible. I think you can be quite onerous really about going through an application process, become a registered provider, but once you've done it, it's fairly straightforward. Next slide. So we're looking at 5-point entry assessment as part of the West Midlands Combined Authority. So some of the 5 points are, you need to be on the register, that's a given. Obviously you can't deliver apprenticeships if you're not on the register. Ofsted grade 2, if you haven't had a full inspection and you've had a monitoring visit, it's got to be reasonable progress in terms of looking at that. And that's really around making sure that we've got the quality provision there. Demonstrate that you've been delivering for the last 12 months and appreciate there are some new providers that have come on board. And then 2 references from employers who have received apprenticeships, and that is just on headed paper, talking about the support that you've given them. And then finally, a due diligence piece. Martin will talk about that as a provider later on, about how we found that process. Once you've done that, it's then we will send out a service level agreement, and that is just to look at what you would do as a provider to support the SME, as you would do normally with the ESFA. So it's only mirroring what the ESFA are looking at. And then additional to that, you'll also have all the paperwork. So on the next slide, the paperwork that we asked to fill in, and those that fill it in will know it's fairly straightforward, is simply a referral sheet. So it's simply an Excel document. I don't think we've gone really technical with this. There are some online portals, but actually we find this works quite well. So on there, we just need some details about the employer. The key thing really is the apprenticeship account ID. So making sure that you get the apprenticeship account ID from the SME so that we can make sure that we do the connection requests. And then it's everything else really about sectors, levels. You could put male or female in there as well. And then additional to that, we do ask for a print screen. Sorry, Lisa, next slide. So that's where you find your account ID. I think everybody's okay with it, but actually if you don't manage a digital account, or if you don't actually go in it as a provider, I know this is done by a lot of your MIS teams, actually that's the information that we need to come across just to make sure. Next slide. Some of the timelines that we look for. So the timelines, we did move this around. So historically, for those who've worked with us previously, it was towards the back end of the month. Because of the 4th working day for the upload, I think that caused quite a lot of issues for providers and colleges. What we have done is moved it to the beginning of the month. So we ask that you send the referral sheet that we've given you and also a print screen of the digital account for your SME across to that email address. That then will be allocated to a Levy donor. So we do that within the first week of the month and it goes out to Levy donors. Around about the 5th to the 15th, we then speak to all 46 Levy donors about allocations. That is just to make sure, and we're there as a broker to support that they're making sure that they're adhering to those timelines. So then we will go through, ask them to connect, and then a connection request will go to your SMEs. For those that haven't done it before, you'll see when we do a video shortly, you'll be able to see how that goes through. They need to make sure that once they accept the connection request, when they raise a cohort, it will say, would you like to use your own account or would you like to use the Levy donor's account? Make sure they connect with the Levy donor account. Now, what it does show in your ILR, and what you don't want for DLOC errors, is that it's a Levy paying employer. So if it comes through as a non-Levy, it means that they've probably reserved funding on the digital account. That's just a little bit of a tip as we've gone through the pain barrier, shall we say. Once we've received that, we've done the Levy donor calls just to make sure that we've connected with them. We then send a provider report back to you so you've got a status, so you know exactly whether a connection request has been sent. That will then prompt you or your MIS team to go and speak to the employer to raise the cohort to meet the deadline then for the 4th working day. There are a few that do slip through. Most of them do connect. However, there are a few, and obviously with the timelines coming up to the incentive grants, we're real on a tight deadline really for the 30th of this month. So there are a couple, unfortunately, with levy donors that we do have to kind of chase and sit down. Majority are fantastic though. Next slide. I'm now going to introduce you to Martin Stilgo. He's the director at Digital Native, and he'll talk you through a provider's perspective. Martin.
Hi Lou, thanks for the overview, and also thank you for the invitation to talk about our experience this morning. So as Lou said, I'm a director of Digital Native. We're a tech apprenticeship provider based in Birmingham, though we do work nationally. And I guess a little bit of my background. I guess the reason I'm really passionate about this scheme is when I graduated far too long ago to really remember now, my first job was taking unemployment benefit claims in my local job centre where I worked for the summer. And from there, I went on and I became an adult careers guidance worker. And after that, I actually managed adult careers guidance across Birmingham and Solihull. So the one thing that's always hung what I vaguely call my career together is I'm passionate about skills, and I'm passionate about the ability that training and education has to enable people to have more successful futures moving forwards. So our perspective on the scheme, if we go back to 2019, as a provider, what we were hearing was lots of warnings on the horizon, limits to non-levy funding starts, and it was all looking a little bit bleak. And then I got an email to an invitation to the launch. And again, being a naturally sceptical person, I was a little bit sceptical when I rocked up to that launch. And it was a really interesting day for me, and one that I really remember. So firstly, I met Lou and some of her team. And what I met was people that I think shared my passion for apprenticeships and my passion for skills. And then we sat through some great presentations, and what I saw was some other providers that are on the call today sharing their apprenticeship experiences, and you realise there is genuinely great provision in the region. And then what I saw was a system that seemed fairly sensible. And I kind of remember driving home thinking, it can't be this easy. What's the catch? What have I missed out? So our experience was we thought we'd try the scheme with a cohort. And again, being a little bit sceptical, I thought this is going to be a nightmare. But we went through the due diligence, and that all seemed really sensible. We completed the documentation that we were asked to complete, and that seemed pretty lightweight. We were asked to share a training services agreement from the levy donor with our client. And then the connection request appeared in the levy account, and it was as simple as that. We honestly thought it was going to be ever so bureaucratic, a little bit of a nightmare, a little bit clunky, and it was really smooth. And suddenly we had a really happy client because they could start 10 apprentices where they would have ended up with quite a hefty co-financing bill, and also concerns over whether all 10 could be started at that time. So what we've done since then is we've worked with Lou and her team with large cohorts, we've worked with ones and twos, and each time the system has been smooth. It's worked exactly to the timeline that Lou's outlined there. So what I would say is if there are any providers on the call that haven't engaged with the transfer scheme, I'd really recommend it. Our experience is it's been really smooth and we haven't had a single glitch. The other thing I'd like to just say thank you to Lou and her team for is we do get excellent comms as well. So we get update emails as to we've received your cohort, we've shared it with the levy donor, you should shortly be receiving a connection request. A couple of days later, a reminder, can you just check with your client that the connection request has come through? So I really do feel that they're on top of the process and that they do support us really strongly as a provider. So besides obviously happy clients who aren't paying co-financing, the other reasons that I feel this is really important. The West Midlands Combined Authority do an awful lot to raise the profile of apprenticeships in the region. And as Lou said, there's a lot of competition in the market. We've got Kickstart, we've got a very hot job market at the moment. A lot of people are staying in further education, or more, people going to universities up this year. And I think the work that Lou and the team do to raise the profile of apprenticeships is really important. The other thing is, if you engage in the scheme, you get some really great social media. So I know Lou and the team regularly share good news stories from providers. And again, their reach is a lot wider than ours is as a company. The other thing that I think is really great is the team also showcase your employers. So again, we've had clients of ours that have been asked to go on the radio, they've been asked to give case studies. And again, it's lovely for employers to be able to stand up and say, this is what we're doing to create local opportunities for local people. The other thing that I think is great, it is a regional response. I think in the West Midlands, we are fantastic about talking down the region. If you ever meet somebody from the West Midlands outside of the West Midlands, they don't tell you they're from the West Midlands, and they'll tend to tell you it's a bit of a rubbish place. And it isn't. There's great things happening in our region. And I think it's great that we have this regional response to apprenticeships. The other thing that's really helpful is there is scepticism from employers, because they never usually get free money. And usually when somebody rocks up and says somebody's going to give you free money, they're a little bit confused by that. So the fact that we can share the Levy transfer scheme on a personal basis and talk about individuals like Lou and her team, and point to the fact that this is a real scheme, it's managed by the combined authority, and also share the large employers that are generously making donations into the scheme. So again, it has that credibility, because I certainly have had experiences where employers, when I've spoken to them, have said, sounds like a scam, can we just pay the co-financing fee? And then when you can point to, actually check out this LinkedIn feed, check out this slide, these employers are involved, it does reduce, I guess, that initial skepticism again. And I think the final thing is, it does create opportunities for people in our region to engage in apprenticeships. I've certainly had employers come to us where, yes, does it make a difference if an employer is taking on one apprentice? Possibly not. Their co-financing fees are relatively light. They either need an apprentice or they don't. But we've certainly had clients come to us where they have had larger cohorts and actually said, this scheme has allowed us to create another opportunity. So I think it certainly creates opportunities through everything I've spoken about above, in terms of just raising the profile of the great provision, raising the profile that there is a regional provider base and the great good news stories. But on a financial basis, it does create opportunities as well. So from my perspective, I can only speak positively about the scheme. It's been smooth. It's essentially worked exactly as Lou has outlined. So again, if we've got any providers who aren't signed up and wondering whether they should or shouldn't get involved, my perspective is we've only seen good things from it. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. Brilliant. Now I'm going to hand over to Beth Mullen, who's a marketing assistant at Bespoke Computing. So Beth is an apprentice.
Hello. I'm not sure if my camera's working. It does say it's on.
That's okay.
So yeah, I'm Beth. I'm currently the marketing assistant at Bespoke Computing. Bespoke Computing is a managed IT service provider in Telford, so we're a small little business. We do everything from cybersecurity, IT support, anything, you name it. So I started in April 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic, which was very interesting. And to start an apprenticeship with that too at the same time was kind of daunting. So originally I worked alongside an external marketing agency within the company. We then ended terms with them, so I had to take on the full breadth of the marketing function at Bespoke Computing, which again, quite daunting. But this is probably where I was most grateful for my apprenticeship, because everything I was learning there was getting put into practice, and kind of the other way around as well. So everything I was experiencing in my job, I was being able to put back into the apprenticeship, and kind of all the exams and the portfolios. So it worked really nicely. Kind of what Martin said earlier, I've gone through a pretty typical education system, so schools, sixth form, university, and then into jobs. And now I've gone through an apprenticeship, I kind of wish I'd done that a bit earlier, because it's all good and well learning the theory and kind of doing mock-up scenarios, but it's not until you have an actual job to do and kind of learning on the side that they work perfectly hand in hand. So I think for me personally, it's all from learning from experience, not necessarily just out of a book. They have to have the good balance of both. So yeah, my apprenticeship have let me get on with quite a few different things. So I've luckily got an employer that gives me a lot of autonomy. So on the next slide, there's a few different projects that I've got a hold of. So there's things like on the right, we've got Ask Chris, which was kind of a video series to support businesses and end users with their own questions. So again, through COVID, everybody was a bit, uncertain. So we thought, let's bring some education and some authenticness to it and kind of make people feel at ease. Same with the podcast. These are all completely brand new things that I brought into the business. And they worked incredibly well in regards to building community and gaining some leads, and definitely following. I think I worked out it was a total of 38% rise in following over a year. And that's literally just me kind of coming in with very limited marketing experience, learning from my apprenticeship and kind of taking everything that I know into that. And then, yeah, we've also been able to do a few different events. Dressing the MD up as an elf was quite interesting until I had to follow him around Starbucks. That wasn't fun. But yeah, raising funds for charity, and then obviously networking and expos that have opened up again. So yeah, I don't think I'd ever have had the confidence to do any of that and take it on if I wasn't doing the apprenticeship at the same time. So I think, yeah, like I say, I wish I'd done one sooner, and definitely, like you're saying, raising awareness towards it is definitely worth it at whatever age, because I thought I was too old at 25, but actually it's perfect.
Fab. And have you gone through your endpoint assessment, I hear?
Yeah, I did everything and got a distinction, so I'm pretty impressed with that. I'm pretty happy with that.
Well done. Well done. Thanks, Beth. And I think it really, whilst we all do this day in, day out, and it's all about, us trying to get as many apprenticeship starts as possible, actually, this is why we do it. And this is why we do it, to support businesses, to bring in new talent, particularly with the talent and the labour market the way that it is at the moment. Excuse me. So thank you, Beth. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Great. So now we're moving on to the ESFA National Levy Transfer Portal. And I don't know how many people have accessed the Levy Transfer Portal for the National. Some have, some haven't. What we're going to cover today, whilst we've got links for Levy donors to pledge, what we're going to cover today is, it's a 9-minute video, so I thought we'd flip it up a little bit rather than you hearing me speak all the time, just to kind of look at a step-by-step guide, something that we've managed to get as part of the ESFA a portal. So on there, the link on the screen that you'll find is the opportunities portal. Now this can be found through the link, but it also can be found on their Manage Apprenticeship Service account. So if they go in, they can request that, and we'll show the video following on to the next slide. You'll see there you've got 87 opportunities at the moment. So those people that haven't gone on there, whilst obviously we've got the levy transfer across the region, if you then have exposure outside of the West Midlands, or particularly 25 plus and not in the local authority areas, there is an opportunity to go put the opportunity on there. So 87 opportunities, just over 5 million, I believe, for this financial year. And then it goes to multi-year pledges as well. So one to look at and to trial. They are developing it, so it is in its still infancy, and there are issues that we need to iron out. One particularly where, as a SME, you can apply for 5 applications, but then the large employer will need to accept or reject. There is a reject button now, so if you have got smaller employers that are engaging on the National Levy Transfer Portal, they can reject that, which is great. And then moving forward, then next part of next year, they'll look at the financial aspect. So you'll be able to, as an SME and a Levy transfer employer, be able to have the financial aspects as well. So it's great because it gives people a bit of a national coverage, really, particularly if there aren't combined authorities in other regions. So I'd encourage, go and have a little look at that, have a little look what's available, and then support your SME to go on the national transfer as well. So I'm just going to show you a video. It is 9 minutes long, but I think it's worthwhile. I think we all kind of say, yes, we'll watch that, or yes, we'll have a little look at that guidance. And I know it's quite laborious, but actually take 9 minutes, have a cup of tea, and just watch the video, and then it'll be useful for you later on. Can we put the video on, Lisa? Thank you. Don't seem to be getting any sound, Lisa. You just all get to see my big head, sorry. Just going to get this reshared now for you with sound. Out of interest, with a show of hands, how many people have looked at the national transfer system just while we're getting the video up? David. Okay, it's going up 8. Fine. That might be useful to have a discussion about how you guys have found it at the end. You're having trouble, Lisa?
In this video, we'll go through the process of how to view and apply for transfer opportunities. Let's take a look. So what are transfers? Employers who pay the apprenticeship levy and have unused apprenticeship funds can transfer these funds to other employers. Since 2019, levy paying employers could transfer a maximum amount of 25% of their annual funds. Transfer funds are used to pay for the full cost of training and assessment costs of the apprenticeships that are agreed with the receiving employer, and transfer funds must cover the full duration of the apprenticeship programme. All transfer opportunities will be shown publicly. Employers, training providers and intermediaries will be able to see all transfer opportunities at the following link. Only employers with an apprenticeship service account can apply to a transfer. Let's take a look at the journey. Employers can start this journey from the home screen within their apprenticeship service account. Within the Finances section, there will now be a Your Transfers option. This will take you to the Manage Transfers section of your account. This provides more information on how to apply for a transfer opportunity, view My Transfer applications, as well as My Transfer Connections, which is the existing functionality. So today we're going to take you through how to apply for a transfer opportunity. So when you're ready, you can click the button. This takes you to the start page for Find a Business to Fund Apprenticeship Training. So as a business of any size, you can use this service to apply for funding from large businesses who want to fund 100% of your apprenticeship training and assessment costs. This part of the service is public facing, so this can be accessed by employers, training providers as well as intermediaries, and you don't need an apprenticeship service account to view the transfer opportunities. So when you're ready, you can press Start Now. This takes you to the Search Funding Opportunities, where you can see the list of transfer opportunities that's available to you. You can see that some opportunities have the employer's name, such as Barry & Barry, where other pledges are shown as just opportunity. That's because employers decided to remain anonymous for the first part of the journey. You can also see that there's filters on the left-hand side. The filters won't be available from day one of the service, but they will be coming soon to help you use it. If you see an opportunity and you want to learn more about it, you can click on the employer's name. This will take you to further information about the opportunity. For example, this will show you the criteria as which they want to fund apprenticeship training in. So in this case, the location, sector, type of job role and the level of apprenticeship training. This also shows the total funding available for this financial year. If you would like to apply for the transfer funds, you can select yes, or if you don't, you can go back to the list of other opportunities. To apply for the transfer funds, you do need an apprenticeship service account to be considered for training and to progress with the application. So for now, let's click continue. This will take you to the Create a Transfer Applications page. So all your details will be passed to a large business offering the transfer as funding. Please ensure that the information you provide is truthful and accurate. So first off, you can add information about the apprenticeship training that you would like to receive funding for. You can start by adding the job role. Also add the number of apprentices which you would like to fund, as well as the proposed start date of the apprenticeship training. And here you can see the total cost for this training for this financial year, and this information has been prorated based on the start date which you've provided. Next, you can select if you've found a training provider. So in this case, let's go no. Next, you can add in further details about your business. You can select one or more sectors to describe your business. And when you're ready, you can add the location where your apprentice will work. If your apprentice will work at more than one location, enter the one where they'll spend most of their time. If they're based at home, use this postcode or your business location. When you're ready, press continue. Next, you can add further information about your apprenticeship. This information will help the business offering the funding opportunity to make a decision about accepting your application. This section of the application is optional, however, it is useful to include this information where possible. Things you may want to think about include why you want to employ an apprentice, what the apprentice will help the business to achieve, and any long-term plans for your apprentice. And when you're ready, you can select continue. Last but not least, you can add in the contact details. These contact details will be shared with the sending employer. They may contact you for follow-up questions about your application. When you're ready, you can press continue. Now that you've completed the application, you can scroll up and see the information you've inputted. If you want to go back and make a change, you can click in and make any edits. And when you're ready, you can submit your transfer application. Your application has now been submitted and we've sent you a confirmation email. So what happens next? Your application will be shared with the sending employer, who may contact you to ask follow-up questions about your application. When they've made a decision regarding your application, you will receive an email and notification within your apprenticeship service account. In the meantime, you can also view other opportunities as well as continue back to your account. So now you've submitted your application, there's two ways where you can find further information about the status of it. So the first way is within the Your Transfer section of your account, and the second option is via tasks, where you'll find information about approved transfer application awaiting your acceptance. When you're ready, you can click on this. This will show you your application status, so approved awaiting your acceptance. This will give an overview about your apprenticeship training course that you've applied for funding, and it will also give you the option to yes, accept the funding, or no, decline the funding. If you do choose to decline the funding, your application will be withdrawn. So when you're ready to accept the funding, you can acknowledge that the sending employer will pay the full cost of the apprenticeship training and assessment, and confirm that all the information you've provided at the application is correct and truthful. And when you're ready, you can select continue. You've now successfully accepted the transfer and we've sent you a confirmation email. So what happens next? You can now add apprentices for the transfer of funding. The sending employer will need to review and approve the details after you have added them. If you want further information to do this, you can watch the support video about how to add apprentices within your account. You can also go back to your applications, where you can see here that this application has now been accepted and funds are available to use. We've also got an additional application here, which is awaiting your approval. If you no longer need this application for transfers because you've accepted another one, we would encourage you to view this application and then choose to subsequently withdraw it. If your transfer application has been unsuccessful, you will be informed over email. You'll also see the status of your application show as unsuccessful. If this is the case, you can still view it and apply for other transfer opportunities, or you can use the Reserve Apprenticeship Service funds and go via the reservations route. Or you can go back to your account. To summarise, so in this video we've talked through how you can view transfer opportunities. You'll be able to see all transfer opportunities publicly. This will be available on gov.uk and can be accessed by employers, training providers and intermediaries. Employers will be able to apply for transfer opportunities within their apprenticeship service account via a simple application form. They'll also be able to see the status of their applications, apply for transfer opportunities, as well as choose to accept or reject any applications. If you would like to go through the different functions and processes of the apprenticeship service in more detail, such as how to create a pledge or how to add apprentices to your account, then you can check out other support videos and links are in the description below. We hope you found this video useful. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Lisa. I think it's quite useful to have the step-by-step guides, really. That is a fairly new video that's available. So for those that don't know, it's on the ESFA YouTube channel, but we have put it in the links and we'll send it out. So I suppose in terms of the national portal, recommend adding more detail. Feedback I've been getting from large employers is that if there's not enough detail, they probably will sit on it for quite a while. Similarly, there wasn't a decline button. There is now, so they can decline, but also if not in the sector. So if they've specified engineering, manufacturing, and it's healthcare, then they probably won't accept that. So that's just a few little tips. So now it's over to you guys really for some questions and answers. I said we're probably going to be about an hour, and then you can get some time back. But ultimately, it's questions from you guys about the regional transfer. And also the national. We're not all going quiet on me, are we? Have I bamboozled you all? No. Thanks, Nick. Denise? You're on mute, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, hi Lou. Yeah, I've worked with you before and it was, you know, good experience. I know we haven't done any transfers recently. One of our employers arranged their own transfer behind the scenes. It didn't come through us, just notified us afterwards. And we got to as far as the on the actual DAS to approve. And then when it came through, it was rejected. So in the meantime, we went back to our employer to ask what they were going to do. But with those situations, when they haven't involved the training providers such as us, should we still come through to you, Lou, once we know that this transfer's going through, even though the employer may have arranged the, you know, transfer directly with the donor?
I'll probably suggest engaging with the SME about which route they want to go through, because what we don't want to do is obviously go and allocate funding with a Levy donor when they're already in the process of going and doing one, but we can have an offline conversation about it. Ultimately, the SME can just go directly, and some are proactive, some need support of providers. So I'd probably say it's important to have a conversation with the SME.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's just that once it got to the point of the transfer, unfortunately, it got rejected, and I didn't know whether it was because we hadn't been involved. Yeah.
And
Okay.
you're
Thanks.
so far down the line then, aren't you? And actually then you're looking at ILR deadlines and, you know, you've got to meet certain time frames. So I suppose from an employer engagement perspective, it's just making sure that the team are saying you've got to let us know.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
All right. No. Hello.
Hi Lou, thanks for that. It's really helpful. Question that my MIS team asked me to ask was, in the previous iteration of the scheme, you were always really clear that, you know, it was only dependent on the available funds. And there were times where, you know, funds, you know, weren't available. Is that going to be the case with this time round?
So we've currently got about £2 million for this financial year, so that will take us up until March. It's then going to reset, so then we'll probably have more. It was paused towards the latter end of last year because there was, due to COVID, we opened it up to all sectors, all levels, all standards, and I think we've kind of whittled that down to the 16 to 24 market. So at the moment, I've got 2 million. Can't foresee it, but obviously, you never know. I mean, if everybody comes on board today, then fantastic. But that said, we'll support people to go on the national system as well.
Yeah.
So either way, we want to make sure that we get funding for everybody, really.
Okay. That's brilliant. Thanks, Lou.
Yeah. This is going to be a short Q&A, isn't it? Lisa, do you want to pop up the criteria or the crib sheet that we've created for the region? This is just to try and make it as easy as possible across the local authorities and across the combined authority as well, just so you've got a bit of a clearer picture. If the team are going out there, if they're doing engagement, I'd probably suggest as well, if you can put it on your social media, tag us in as a combined authority. We'll share your activity as well. I think ultimately it's about us all trying to help one another to try and get the message out there. With the incentive grants, it's a nice little hook. Not only are they getting 100% funding, they're also getting the incentive grant as well. So this will just, you'll send this out. So we'll send this out and it's just a top criteria. Can you scroll down? Oh, there we go. So this will just give you a bit of a map. Postcodes, we decided to not go on postcodes. I think it's very ESF. And I think actually you can then get caught up in borders and, you know, they're on the border. So for me, it's not about postcodes. Further down, Lise. Thanks, Gemma. So this is just, if they're 16 to 24-year-olds, just following on from the presentation, if they're still within the Birmingham, Coventry local authority areas, we will then distribute out to the local authorities as well. GBS Leopard supporting with Birmingham, so we'll pop that information as we go along. Coventry will accept direct or come through us, so either way they will get to them. Then you've got the Shropshire and all the other regions. So we should have everything covered. If not, there's the national portal. Does anybody want to talk about their experience on the national portal and how they found it? Has it been simple? Has anyone gone through? David, are you on mute? Did you want to say something?
That's the favourite 3 words in the last 18 months.
Hello.
Birmingham. Yeah, went through it. It's been a little while ago, I have to say. But yeah, found it fairly easy, and SMEs found it quite easy to follow.
Okay,
I think one of the positive things, if you go onto the national one, is actually you get an email at every stage. So almost you're given the next step via the email once you've actually got information about where you've got to in the process. So from my experience with SMEs, they've actually found it quite user-friendly, to be fair.
Great. And I think ultimately it's that initial stages whereby once large employers get up to speed and the developments happen, from there they'll then obviously move through the system. So that's really good, really good. And I think it will evolve. And actually, there's a fairer opportunity for people to access the funds nationally. That is. Okay. If there's no more, Bev's coming in at the last minute, and we're just about to log off now. if nobody else has got any questions, everybody's got the email address and we know where we're coming from. Thanks, Paul. Bev, sorry, we're jumping off now. Everybody
No
knows.
worries.
You can get the recording. Everyone knows the email anyway, so pop us an email over and we'll help you. But ultimately, it's about supporting you as providers and colleges to make sure that we get more SMEs through the region. So, thank you very much, everyone. Have a good
Thanks
afternoon.
very much. Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.